Welcome back to Inside the Philippines. If you're new here, this is the channel where men and women who came to these islands looking for something, a fresh start, a second chance, a bit of warmth in the back half of their lives, sit down and tell you the truth about what they found. Not the version they put on Facebook, the real one. The man you're going to hear from today is named Trevor. He's 67 years old, South African, from a steel town on the High Veld, where he spent 40 years as a welder and a fabricator. Big hands, bad knees, and a face weathered by heat and sparks. 3 marriages behind him, all of them ended, and by his own account, every one of them was his own doing. He came to the Philippines the way a lot of men do at his age. One more try, no illusions left, or so he told himself. But Trevor did one thing that almost none of them do. Quietly, without telling a soul, he taught himself to understand her language. And what that decision eventually let him hear, standing in his own kitchen, holding a cup of coffee, pretending he didn't understand a word, is the reason he's talking to us at all. That's all I'll say for now. I don't want to give it away. Before we start, do me a favor. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from tonight, because it always amazes me how far these stories travel. If you've lived something like this yourself, share it down below. Somebody needs to read it. And if this channel has ever told you the truth when nobody else would, hit like and subscribe so we can keep doing it. Here's his story, in his own words. My name's Trevor, and I want to start by saying I'm not a clever man. I want that clear before anything else, because everything that happened because I thought I was cleverer than I am. I'm from Vanderbijl Park. If you don't know it, it's a town on the High Veld, south of Johannesburg, built around the steelworks, the old Iscor, big smokestacks, the smell of iron in the air on a cold morning. My father worked the mills, and I worked the mills, or near enough. Welder and fabricator, 40 years. I could lay a bead of weld so clean you'd think it was drawn on with a pen. That was the one thing in my life I was ever truly good at. Steel doesn't lie to you, Boat. It's either sound or it isn't. You can test it, you can trust it. People, now. People were never my strong suit. I've been married 3 times. And before anybody out there wants to feel sorry for me, let me stop you. All 3 were my fault. Not, we grew apart, not, she changed. My fault. The first one, I was young and I drank and I thought coming home was optional. The second, I worked every hour God sent and told myself I was doing it for her, when really I was just hiding from her in the workshop. The third, Sanny, her name was, a good woman. The third one I just went cold. I don't know how else to put it. I stopped reaching for her, and I didn't even notice until she'd stopped reaching back. She left in 2019. Didn't shout, just packed slowly over a month, which is worse. So there I was, 64 years old, living alone in a face-brick house in Vanderbijl Park, with a garden going to weeds and a bakkie in the driveway I hardly drove. The kids, I've got 2 from the first marriage, they phone on birthdays, that's about the size of it. And the country I love, and I do love it, was getting hard. Load shedding, so the power's off 4-5 hours a day, you're sitting in the dark. Crime you don't even talk about anymore because it's just weather now. My pension's a modest thing, a provident fund payout I'd stretched into a small monthly annuity, and I'd saved, over a lifetime of overtime, about 460,000 rand. Call it 25,000 US dollars. That was it. That was the whole prize for 40 years under a welding hood. I'd sit on the stope in the evening with a Clippies and Coke, and I'd think, is this it then? Is this the whole of the rest of it? A chap I used to work with, Danny, he'd gone off to the Philippines 2 years before, married a girl from Cebu, and every photo he posted he was grinning like a Blixen, sitting at a plastic table with a San Miguel and the sun on him. And I'll be honest with you, I was jealous, not of the girl, of the grinning. I couldn't remember the last time I'd grinned like that. Danny phoned me one Sunday, on the video, and behind him you could hear a rooster and a radio and a child laughing, and he had this color in his face I hadn't seen on a man our age in years. He said, "Trevor, man, I get up when I want. The sun's out 300 days a year. My baby cooks me fish I caught that morning, and a beer costs less than a loaf of bread back home. He wasn't bragging exactly. He was just alive. And I sat there in my cold lounge with the power off and a candle going and my breath almost showing. And I thought, I've got a deep freeze full of Boer Wars and nobody to bry it for. What am I saving myself for exactly? I want you to understand the specific shape of the loneliness. Because it's not dramatic, that's the thing nobody warns you about. It's not weeping. It's small. It's cooking for one and eating standing up at the counter because sitting down at a table alone is somehow worse. It's the phone not ringing on a Saturday. It's talking to the dog. I had a dog then, an old Ridgeback called Bruno, gone now, talking to the dog just to hear a voice in the house. It's 40 years of being needed, being the man on the floor everyone brings the difficult job to, the one who can read a drawing and make the thing, and then one day nobody needs you to make anything anymore. You're just an old okay with sore hands and a pension waiting. I started reading about it at night. The way you do. You tell yourself you're just curious. The cost of living, the weather, and I hate this word now, the friendliness of the women. I read the horror stories too, mind. I'm not a complete idiot. I read about the blokes who lost everything, the scams, the sob stories, the money that flows one direction and never comes back. I read all of it. And here's the thing I want you to understand, because it's the whole rotten heart of it. I thought those stories were about other men, stupider men, lonelier men, men who didn't have a welder's eye for a bad joint. I actually thought that. I thought, Trevor, you'll go in with your eyes open. You'll be different. Yeah. Well, there was one more thing, and this is the part 1000 actually not ashamed of, the one decision in this whole business I'd make again. I decided that if I was going to do this, really do it, not just holiday and come home, then I wasn't going to be one of these old conos who stands in a room full of Filipinos and understands nothing, grinning like a dog while everyone talks around him. I'd been the man who didn't listen for 3 marriages. I was done being that man. So before I ever booked a flight, before I'd even properly met her, I started to learn Tagalog. At night, after the news, with a workbook I ordered and an app on the phone, and videos of a smiling woman in Manila teaching colors and numbers. Magandang umaga, salamat, magkano. I practiced in the baki on the way to the shops, talking to myself like a madman at the robot. I told myself it was respect, and it was. But I'll tell you something I only worked out much later. Part of me, some careful, wounded, watchful part of me that 3 divorces had built, part of me wanted to be able to hear what people said when they thought I couldn't. I didn't admit that to myself. Not then. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I met her. Her name was Marisel. I found her, and I'm not going to dress it up, on Filipino Cupid, which is exactly what it sounds like. I'd been on there about a month, and most of it, I want to be honest, most of it made me feel dirty. Girls of 24 calling me handsome sir, and asking in the second message if I had WhatsApp, and could I help with load. Load's the airtime, the phone credit. I learned that word fast. I'd close the laptop feeling like a mark, because I was one. Marisel was different, and I know how that sounds. Every man in every one of these stories says she was different. But hear me out, because the ways she was different are exactly the ways that got me. She was older, for one. Not a girl. 39 when we met. I was 64. So a real gap, but not obscene, not grandfather and child. She had lines by her eyes. She wasn't done up like the others. Her profile photo was her in a plain shirt at what looked like a fiesta, holding a plate of pancit, laughing at something off to the side, not at the camera. She'd written that she was from Batangas, that she worked in a small carinderia, an eatery, that her father had passed and she helped look after her mother. She wrote in careful, correct English. And in the whole first week, she didn't ask me for 1 cent. That was it. That's the hook, if you want to call it that. She didn't ask. So, of course, Being a man, I started wanting to give. We moved off the app onto Messenger and then to video calls, and this is where I'll admit the Tagalog paid off in a way that felt like magic to me at the time. I'd throw in a line, "Kumusta ka, Marisel?" Clumsy, my high-veld accent mangling it, and she'd shriek with laughter and delight and clap her hands, and then rattle off something fast, and I'd catch maybe one word in 5, and we'd both laugh. She thought it was the most charming thing, this old South African trying. She had no idea how much I actually understood by then, and how much more I was understanding every week. I never corrected the impression. I told myself it was a nice surprise I was saving up. That's the lie I told myself. A surprise. Those 4 months of video calls, I need to describe them properly, because that's where the real hook set, long before I spent any money. We had a rhythm. She'd call at what was her lunchtime and my breakfast, and I'd have the coffee on, and she'd walk me around her day. She'd prop the phone on a shelf in the carinderia and cook while we talked, chopping garlic and ginger for the day's adobo, the pan spitting, a fan going somewhere, a tricycle blatting past outside, and she'd talk to me the whole time like I was standing there in the kitchen with her, not performing, just living, with me watching. And after a lifetime of coming home to a dark house, watching a woman go about an ordinary Tuesday and want me there for it, that got into me deeper than any flattery could have. She'd ask about my day, which nobody had done in years, and she'd actually listen to the answer, even when the answer was that I'd regrouted the bathroom or Bruno had been sick on the carpet. She remembered things. She'd say, "How's your knee? Is it the left one or the right one that's bad?" She knew it was the right one. Small thing. It's the small things that do you in. She lived in a barangay outside Lipa City, in the coffee country of Batangas, where you can smell kapeng barako roasting and the volcano sits out there over Taal Lake like a sleeping thing. She'd walk around with the phone showing me. The sari-sari store on the corner with the cigarettes hanging in strips, the basketball court where the boys played till dark, the rooster her neighbor was mad about, the little concrete block house with the tin roof where she lived with her mother, Aling Puring. We talked for 4 months before I went. 4 months. Every morning her good morning po with the sun coming up over there while it was still last night for me. She told me about her marriage. She'd been married young, a Filipino boy who'd gone to work in Saudi and simply stopped coming home, stopped sending, vanished into another life. No divorce in the Philippines, you understand? There isn't one. Only annulment, and that costs the earth 300,000-400,000 pesos, years of it. So she was still, on paper, married to a ghost. She told me this early, and crying, and I remember thinking, an honest woman would tell you that. A scammer would hide it. I want to talk about the money because you came here for the truth of it, and I'll give you the truth. In those 4 months I sent her, in total, almost nothing. A little for load. Once, 5,000 pesos. That's about $90, near enough 1,700 rand, when the carinderia's gas ran out and she couldn't cook to sell. $90. I remember being almost proud of how little she took. See, I thought, this one's not like that. I booked the flight in the March. Johannesburg to Manila, the long way, through the Gulf. 20-something hours with my knees screaming. And the whole flight I kept doing my Tagalog drills under my breath, this daft old welder with his workbook, while the businessmen slept. Bahay, house, pera, money, pamilya, family, mahal kita. I love you. I practiced that one the most. I'm not too proud to tell you that. She met me at the airport in Manila with a cardboard sign with my name spelled wrong, Trevor. And when she saw me, she put her hand over her mouth and cried, and I'll tell you, Boet, 64 years old and a stranger crying because she's glad to see you, that does something to a lonely man that I can't fully describe. It undoes something. All my welder's judgment, all my I'll be different. It just went soft in me. Standing there in that hot terminal with the aircon losing its fight and the smell of the place coming in. That sweet diesel and frangipani smell you never forget. And I thought, I'm home. God help me, that's exactly what I thought. That first visit was 3 weeks, and I'll not lie to you, it was the happiest 3 weeks I'd had in 20 years. We drove down to Batangas in a rented van, past the pineapple stands and the coffee, and I met the family. And this is where the real machinery of the thing started turning, though I didn't hear it turning yet. The barangay welcomed me like something out of a film. There was a little feast. They'd killed a pig, lechon on a bamboo pole, the fat crackling, and pancit and San Miguel getting warm in the heat, and a videoke machine wheeled out into the street so that half of Batangas could murder air supply songs at 110 decibels until 2 in the morning. Aling Puring, the mother, held both my hands in both of hers and looked up at me and called me anak, son, and there were tears in her eyes. Marisel had a younger sister, Rowena, sharp and pretty and quick with English, studying to be a nurse in Lipa, and a brother, Boye, quiet, a bit shifty, drove a tricycle, and cousins and aunties and children beyond counting, all of them shy and giggling and pushing the little ones forward to shake the giant's hand. I slept badly that first night in the barangay, on a foam mattress on the floor of Aling Puring's front room, with the videoke still going down the road. Some auntie doing my way, of course, always my way, and the heat lying on me like a wet blanket, and the geckos calling out from the walls, and a dog barking at another dog barking at another dog all the way down the valley. And I lay there sweating, and I thought, in a kind of wonder, there are 12 people in this little house, and every one of them is happy I'm here. When last had 12 people anywhere been happy I was there? At my own third wedding, maybe half the room was happy, and that's being generous. In the morning, Aling Puring made me a breakfast of garlic rice and a fried egg, and this dried fish called tuyo that I couldn't stomach at first and grew to love, and she watched me eat every bite with her hands folded like she was watching a miracle. And when I said, "Salamat po," thank you, with the respectful po, she nearly wept again and pinched my cheek like I was a boy. Rowena translated the auntie's questions, which were all, every one of them, some version of, "Are you good to our Marisel, and will you take care of her?" And I said yes and meant it with my whole chest. Nobody, that first visit, asked me for a thing. That's God's truth. The money came later and it came sideways, never head on, and I want to be fair about that timeline because it matters. Now here's the thing about that welcome, and I need you Westerners watching to really hear this, because it took me years to understand it, and I'll try to save you the tuition. It was real. That's what nobody tells you. The warmth was not fake. Aling Puring genuinely, in that moment, loved me, the way you love a good rain after drought. It's just that in that culture, love and obligation and money are not separate rivers the way we like to pretend they are back home. They run in one channel. A man who is loved is a man who provides. A man who provides is loved. Trying to pull those two apart in a Batangas barangay is like trying to separate the heat from the fire. I didn't know that yet. I thought love was one thing and money was another, and you kept them in different pockets. That was my first real mistake, and it was a big one. The money started small and reasonable, which is exactly how it always starts. It's never a demand. That's the part the horror stories get wrong. You're braced for a demand, and it never comes. What comes is a situation. Aling Puring's blood pressure, Rowena's tuition for the semester, and she's such a bright girl, and a nurse, imagine. A nurse in the family. She could work abroad one day and lift them all. The Carinderia needing a proper new gas range, each one a small thing. each one on its own, something any decent man would help with. 2,000 pesos here, 5,000 there, $36, $90. Nothing when you say it in dollars. Nothing when you say it once. But I was sending it more than once. And I want to be straight with you about a number, because vague is how these stories lie. By the end of that first year, because I went home and came back, and went home and came back, burning through my airfare and my savings a slice at a time. By the end of that first year, I'd settled into sending ailing Puring 12,000 pesos a month. Regular. Like a wage. 12,000 pesos is about $220, call it 4,000 rand. Every month. For the household, Marisel said. For the medicine and the food and the little one's school things. Let me give you one, so it's not just numbers. There was a day Marisel came off the phone with her face gone gray, and she wouldn't say what it was, and I had to coax it out of her over an hour, which of course made me more desperate to fix whatever it was. Turned out the Carinderia's chest freezer had died in the heat, and a whole load of fish and pork had spoiled, and it was the mother's freezer, really, the family's, and without it there was no cold storage, and the little business that fed 6 people was finished. A new freezer was about 18,000 pesos, $320. And I want you to notice what I noticed, or should have. She didn't ask me for it. She just told me the problem, crying, and then said, "It's okay, we'll manage, don't worry." And what does a man do, Boet? What does a man who wants to be needed do when a woman he loves says, "Don't worry" about a thing he can fix with $300? He worries. He insists. He practically begs her to let him help. I did. I felt like a hero handing it over. And that, right there, is the whole con and the whole marriage in one small transaction, and to this day I couldn't tell you which one it was or whether the freezer was even really dead. That's the discard of it. The resourcefulness, the hustle, and it's genuinely admired over there. It's a survival skill in a hard place. Sometimes it points at you and sometimes it points at life, and often you can't tell the difference until years later, and even then, not always. And you know what? On my budget, $220 a month I could just about carry. That was the devil of it. It was affordable. It was affordable enough that I never had to stop and add it up over the years, which is precisely why I didn't until much later, when adding it up was the only thing left to do. The Tagalog, meanwhile, was getting good. Really good. I'd stopped needing the app. I could follow the fast talk around the dinner table now, not every word, but the shape of it, the drift, the jokes. And here's the thing. I kept it hidden. Still, I'd sit at that table under the bare bulb, with the moths battering it, and the geckos going tick-tick-tick on the wall, and I'd let my face go blank and friendly and stupid, the way they expected the Kano's face to be, and I'd listen. Mostly what I heard was fine, ordinary, family stuff. Who was pregnant, who was lazy, whose husband in Qatar had stopped calling. But now and then I'd catch a thing that put a cold little splinter in me, and I'd take it out and look at it and then, God forgive me, put it away. Rowena, once, laughing, "Ang yaman naman ni Kuya." Big brother is so rich. And ailing Puring, sharp, hushing her, and me across the table smiling, buttering my pandesal, understanding every syllable. He's not rich, I wanted to say. I'm a welder from Vanderbijl Park with $25,000 and a bad back. But I said nothing, because I wanted the dream more than I wanted the truth. That's the confession under all my other confessions, if you want it. I heard things from the very start, and I chose the dream. We married in the November of that first year. A small church wedding in Lipa, Marisel in a dress her auntie made, me sweating through a barong they'd bought me 2 sizes too big. It cost, all in, the wedding, the little reception, the flights, my visa runs, the better part of 180,000 pesos across those trips. Around $3,200, 59,000 rand. I paid it gladly. I'd have paid twice, I want to tell you about our actual marriage now, the day-to-day of it, because it matters for what comes, and because it's the part where one have to be fairest to her. We rented a slightly bigger place in the barangay, still concrete block, still tin roof, but our own, with a proper bedroom and a little kitchen where I put up shelves myself. A welder likes to build a thing, and I built her a spice rack she loved. I got a 13 visa eventually, the marriage visa, so I could stay. And Marisel, day to day, was good to me. I need to say that plainly because it would be easy, now, standing where I stand, to paint her as a villain. And she wasn't a villain. She cooked the things I liked. She learned to make a proper South African-style braai for me, Boer Wars we found at an expat shop in Manila, and she'd laugh at me for wanting the meat, so plain, no sauce, Trevor, so boring. She rubbed my back when it seized. She held my hand in church. When I got dengue in the second year and shook and sweated for a week, she slept on the floor by the bed and didn't leave. On the good days, and there were good days, plenty of them, we'd take the tricycle into Lipa on a Sunday after Mass and eat at a Jollibee because she loved the fried chicken and the spaghetti, that sweet Filipino spaghetti with the hot dogs in it, that I secretly thought was a crime against food, but ate anyway, because she was so happy eating it. And we'd walk around the SM Mall in the cool of the aircon, not buying anything, just walking, the way couples do, and she'd hold my arm, and people would look. An old white man and a Filipina. Everyone knows exactly what they think they're looking at. And she never once looked ashamed of me. Held my arm tighter, if anything. I was grateful for that in a way that embarrasses me now. And in the evenings back in the barangay, we'd sit outside with the neighbors, and I'd have a red horse, the strong one, going warm, and the men would try to teach me to play the guitar, and the women would tease Marisel about me in Tagalog thinking I couldn't follow, and mostly it was sweet. Look how he looks at her, that kind of thing. And I'd sit there in the dark, understanding it all and feeling, for whole hours at a time, like the luckiest fool on the Highveld. I need you to know there was happiness in it. If it had all been misery and fleecing, I'd have left in a month. It's the happiness that keeps you. The happiness is the hook, not the sob stories. Remember that if you remember nothing else. That was real. I have to keep saying that, for my own honesty. Some of it was real. But underneath the sweetness, there was a pressure in that house that I could feel through the walls, and thanks to my secret Tagalog, I could increasingly hear as well. It was the pressure of the family, and it never let up. And it was always, always about money. Not from Marisel to me directly, almost never that, but from the mother to Marisel, in the kitchen, on the phone, in the yard, a constant low grinding. Kunin mo na, ask him already. Hindi ba pwedeng humingi? Can't you ask him for it? And Marisel's voice, tired, saying not now, or he's stressed about the rand, or, and this one I held onto like a man holding a plank in a flood. Nay, tama na, mabait siya. Enough, mother. He's a good man. She defended me. In the language she thought I couldn't understand, she defended me to her own mother. You have no idea how much I built on that one overheard sentence. I built a whole marriage on it. Then Eiling Puring's heart gave a fright. A real one this time. I saw the ECG myself. And she was rushed to a hospital in Batangas City, and the bill came to 150,000 pesos. That's about $2,700. 50,000 rand. And there was no question of not paying it. None. Not for me. Because by then I loved that old woman who called me son. I paid it in a morning, watched my savings drop under the equivalent of $18,000, and felt, strangely, good about it. Useful. A man again. That was the year I stopped counting. And a man who stops counting, in the Philippines, is a man the water has closed over. There's a boy I have to tell you about now. His name was Kirby. I met him at that first fiesta, and 100 times after. A little lad, 4 or 5 when I first met him, then 6, then 7, quick and quiet with a gap in his teeth. Always at Aling Puring's place 2 barangays over, the one where the grandmother mostly stayed. He called Marisel Tita, Auntie. He was, I was told, Rowena's boy, from a relationship that had gone wrong before I came, and Rowena being busy with her nursing, the grandmother raised him. That's the story. That's the story I was told, and the story I believed, and the story I built my picture of that family on for the better part of 3 years. I liked that boy. I want to say that. Whatever else this story is, I liked Kirby. I taught him to hold a screwdriver properly. I brought him a little welding mask keyring from a shop in Manila, and he wore it on his school bag every day. When I'd come round, he'd run at my legs. And I never once questioned who he was, because why would I? Every family out there has a child being raised by a Lola. It's the most normal thing in the islands. Half the country's grandmothers are raising the children of parents gone off to work in Manila or Dubai or on a ship somewhere. I mention him now because he's the hinge the whole door swings on, and I want you to have met him as I met him, innocently, before I tell you what I heard. The house was where it all came to a head. The big commitment. The point past which there's no easy walking back. It started, as these things do, as a dream we shared. The rented place was fine, but it was rent, money into another man's pocket, and Marisel would talk in the evenings about a proper house. A real one, concrete, 2 rooms, on family land that her father had left. A little plot up the hill with the coffee trees, and a view down toward the lake. A house for us to grow old in. And I, being a fabricator, being a man who has built things his whole life and had nothing left to show for it in Vanderbijl Park but weeds, I lit up at that. A house I could help build with my own hands. Something solid, something sound. Steel doesn't lie, and neither does a properly poured foundation. Now, you who've watched this channel before, you already know the trap, and you're shouting it at your screen. The land. Foreigners cannot own land in the Philippines. Cannot. Not a square inch of it. So any house I built on land in her name, on land in her family's name, land I could pour my whole life into and never own. I knew this. I want to be clear. I knew it. I'd read it 100 times. I told myself the thing every man in my position tells himself. But this is different, because I trust her. And anyway, I'm 66. I don't need to own it. I just need to live in it and die in it, and she loves me, and her mother calls me son. We costed the house at around 700,000 pesos to build properly. That's about $12,600, near enough 230,000 rand, most of what I had left in the world. And I agreed. God help me, I agreed to it. But, and this is the one shred of the old welder's caution that saved me from total ruin, I said I'd pay it in stages, as the work was done. Foundation, then blocks, then roof. I'd release the money when I saw the concrete, not before. 40 years in construction-adjacent work had taught me that much. You don't pay for a job before you see the job. So the money started going out in stages. First pour, first release, about 140,000 pesos. The blocks going up, another release. Boyet, the brother, managing the labor, which meant a lot of men standing around and a lot of San Miguel disappearing. And over about 8 months, I paid in stages, around 420,000 pesos toward that house. That's roughly $7,600, 139,000 rand. I could see it going up, half built, the blocks gray against the coffee green, the rebar sticking up out of the top waiting for a second story we'd dreamed about, and I felt, I'll be honest, I felt proud. I'd point it out to Kirby. We're building a house, hey boy? And he'd grin his gap-toothed grin. But the cracks were showing, and not in the concrete. I'd go up to that building site most mornings with my coffee and just stand in it. I couldn't help myself. 40 years in the trade, I'd check the work. And the work, I'll be honest, was rough. The rebar was too thin and too far apart. The concrete mix was sandy. The block courses weren't plumb. And when I said something to Boyet through Marisel, gently, the way you do, it got smoothed over. It's fine, Kuya. This is how we build here. It's strong. And I let it go because I didn't want to be the difficult Kano, the one who thinks he knows better than the locals in their own country. But I knew the joints were bad. That's the bitter joke of it. I could see the bad joints in the concrete plain as day and say nothing, while I couldn't see the bad joints in my own marriage at all. A man'll trust his eyes on steel and turn them off on his own life. I did anyway. The asks were coming faster now, and rougher. Boye needed a better motorbike for the hauling, 90,000 pesos, $1,600, and I paid it. Tired, not even arguing, and never saw it hauling anything but Boye to the cockfights. Rowena's tuition doubled. There was always a fiesta, always a death, always a roof, always a christening where the Kano was expected to be the ninong, the godfather, which is a lovely honor and a lifelong open check. And Marisel, caught in the middle of it, got quieter with me and sharper on the phone. And I'd hear her in the yard at night, hissing at her mother down the line, and there was a new note in it I didn't like and couldn't place. Not defending me anymore. Something more tangled. Ashamed, almost. I'd lie in that half-built house's rented stand-in, listening to the roosters start up at 4, and I'd think, something's not right here, Trevor. Something in the arithmetic of this family doesn't close. But I couldn't have told you what. I just felt the joint was bad. The way you feel a weld's got a hidden crack in it before you can prove it. You just know the metal's wrong. I found out on an ordinary Tuesday in my own kitchen, holding a cup of Nescafe, pretending to read the label on a tin of corned beef. Marisel was in the next room, on the phone with her mother, and she thought I was outside, and she was talking fast and low and upset in Tagalog, the full-speed Batangas. Tagalog nobody slows down for the deaf old Kano, and by then, 3.5 years of secret study and secret listening, I understood all of it. Not the drift, all of it. I'm going to tell you what she said, as near as I can render it, because I've replayed it about 10,000 times. She said, "Nay, tama na. Hindi na ako makahingi sa kanya para sa bahay. Enough, mother. I can't ask him for any more for the house." And the mother's voice, tinny, pushing. "Get it while there's still something to get. He's old. Think of the future. Think of the boy. And Marisel. And here's where the kitchen floor dropped out from under me." Marisel said, low, breaking, "Alam ko, para kay Kirby ang lahat ng to. Anak ko siya. Hindi ko kayang sabihin sa kanya." I know. All of this is for Kirby. He's my son. I can't tell him. Anak ko siya. My son. Not Rowena's. Hers. The boy I'd taught to hold a screwdriver, the boy with my welding mask keyring on his bag. He was hers. She'd had him with the ghost husband. Or with someone after. I never fully learned which, and it stopped mattering. She'd hidden him. Given him to the grandmother, called him her nephew, called herself his auntie, for 3.5 years, to my face in English, while the money I sent flowed to a boy she'd never once let me know was hers. I stood there in that kitchen with the Nescafe going cold in my hand. I didn't drop the cup. I didn't gasp. My heart did something, sure. Went cold and heavy and slow. But I want to tell you what I mostly felt, because it wasn't what you'd expect. And it's why this story doesn't have a clean ending. Because she kept talking. She was crying now, really crying. And she said to her mother, "Mabait siya sa akin? Tinatrato niya akong tao? Nakakahiya na ako sa sarili ko." "He's good to me. He treats me like a person. I'm ashamed of myself." And the mother, hard, "Sentiment doesn't build a house." And Marisel, "Ayoko na. Ayoko nang magsinungaling sa kanya." I don't want to anymore. I don't want to lie to him anymore. So there it was. All of it, at once, in one phone call. The ugly thing, she'd lied to me about a child for 3.5 years. Her family had run me like a tap, and a good slice of my life savings had gone to a boy I'd been deliberately kept from knowing. And in the very same breath, the human thing. She was a mother protecting her child in the only way a poor woman in a barangay with a ghost for a husband knows how. She was ashamed. She'd defended me 100 times to a mother who wouldn't let up. And she'd just said, thinking I couldn't understand, that she didn't want to lie to me anymore. Both true. That's the part one can't get past even now. Both those things were completely true at the same time, and I understood both of them in Tagalog, standing in my socks on the kitchen lino. I didn't confront her that day. I put the cup down, and I walked out, and I drove the rented scooter down to Taal Lake and sat looking at the volcano until dark. And I let myself understand that the thing I'd feared was true, and that it was worse and gentler than I'd feared, both. I sat on the black sand with the fishermen taking their little bunkas out for the evening, the outriggers cutting the flat water, and I did the thing a welder does when a structure's failed. I went back over every joint in my head, trying to find where it first went wrong. And I couldn't. That was the terrible part. There was no single lie I could point at and say, "There, that's the crack. If I'd caught that one, the whole thing holds." It wasn't built on one lie. It was built the way that house on the hill was built. 100 small compromises, each one, "Fine, Kaya, it's strong," until you've got a structure that looks like a marriage and won't bear weight. And I'd stood in it every morning with my coffee, checking everyone's work but my own. I thought about Kirby's face. That was the thing that kept coming back, not Marisel's. Kirby's, with the gap in his teeth, running at my legs, my welding mask keyring on his bag. Anak ko siya. All this time I'd been, without knowing it, helping to raise the boy. And there was a part of me, sitting on that black sand, that thought, well, that's not the worst thing a man could find out he'd been doing. And another part that thought, she looked me in the eye for 3.5 years and called him her nephew. Both parts were right. I've stopped waiting for one of them to win. When I finally told her, 3 days later, quietly, in English at our own table, I did the cruelest kind thing I've ever done. I told her I'd understood her Tagalog. All of it. For 3.5 years. Her face when she understood what that meant. That I'd heard the phone calls, the mother, the kunin mo na, and also the mabait siya, the he's a good man. I'll carry that face to my grave. She didn't deny a thing. She couldn't. There was nothing left to hide behind. I remember the exact moment I told her I'd understood the Tagalog. We were at our own table, the one under the window where she'd put a plastic cloth with sunflowers on it, and I'd made us both a coffee because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. And I said it in Tagalog, quietly. Not English. I said, "Naiintindihan ko lahat, Marisel, simula pa nung una." I understand everything. From the very beginning. And I watched 3.5 years rearrange themselves behind her eyes in about 2 seconds. Every phone call, every kitchen conversation, every time she'd stood in a yard and hissed at her mother thinking the deaf old Kano was safely outside. Every mabait siya and every kunin mona. She went white, then she went very still, and then she put her face in her hands and didn't make a sound for a long time, and that silence told me more than any weeping could have. It was the silence of a person whose last wall has just come down. When she finally spoke, she didn't reach for a story. That's the one mercy in it. A real scammer, a hard one, would have had a story ready. She just said, in a small voice, "Since when do you understand?" And I said, "Since the beginning," and she said, "So you heard?" and couldn't finish it. And I said, "Yes. I heard all of it, the bad and the good." And she nodded, slow, like something heavy had been set down. She cried, and she begged. And here's the thing, I couldn't tell you even now how much of the begging was fear of losing the money and how much was fear of losing me, and I've stopped needing to sort it, because I think, honestly, it was both. Braided so tight, not even she could have pulled them apart. She said she'd wanted to tell me 100 times. She said she was afraid I'd leave, and afraid the family would lose everything, and afraid for the boy. she said. Mahal kita, Trevor. And for once I didn't know if it was true, and I told her that the worst thing she'd done wasn't the lie about Kirby. It was that she'd made it so I could never again believe the word Mahal from her mouth. Let me give you the accounting, because you're owed it, and because the numbers are the coldest and clearest part of a story that isn't cold or clear anywhere else. I came to the Philippines with about 25,000 US dollars, 460,000 rand, and my little pension. Over roughly 3.5 years, near enough all of it went. The monthly support to ailing Puring, 12,000 pesos a month for the better part of 30 months, around 330,000 pesos, call it $5,900. The wedding and the flights and the visa runs, about 180,000, $3,200. The mother's heart, 150,000, 2,700. The motorbike and the sari-sari stock and the endless fiestas and christenings, another 120,000 or so, 2,200. And the house I'll never own on land I could never own, 420,000 pesos, $7,600, poured into concrete on a hill in Batangas. Add it up, and it's about 1.2 million pesos, around 21,000 US dollars. Close on 390,000 rand. Gone. Nearly everything I had. The one thing my welder's caution saved me was the back half of that house. I'd have paid the full 700,000 if I hadn't heard that phone call when I did. Because I paid in stages, and because I stopped the day I understood, I never released the last 280,000 pesos. That, and about $4,000 I still had in a South African account she'd never had access to, is the whole of what I walked out with. $4,000 and a pension and a return ticket. I want to tell you the last thing I did before I left, because it's the only part of this I'm at peace with. I didn't stop the boys' schooling. I could have. Part of me, the pettiest, most wounded part, and one won't pretend it wasn't there. Part of me wanted to close every tap at once and let them feel it. But Kirby didn't lie to me. Kirby was 7 and had my keyring on his bag. So I sat down with Marisel, one last time, calm, and I set up enough to see that boy through school. I put it with the nuns at his school directly, not through the family, not through Boye, straight to the school so it couldn't be borrowed. A few tens of thousands of pesos a year, out of my pension, quietly, and I've kept it up. He doesn't know it's me. He thinks it's a scholarship. Maybe one day someone tells him about the old South African who taught him to hold a screwdriver. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. The leaving itself was quiet. No screaming, no scene in the street for the neighbors. I packed the way Sanny once packed on me, slowly, over a week. And I understood at last what that slowness had cost her, because it costs the one leaving just as much. Ailing Puring wouldn't come out of her room. Rowena cried and said I was family, I'd always be family, and maybe she even meant it. Boye was, predictably, nowhere. Marisel drove with me to the airport in Manila, the two of us not saying much in the back of the van with the traffic crawling past the same billboards I'd seen coming in 3.5 years before, full of hope, with my daft workbook in my bag. At the terminal, she held onto my sleeve, the way she had that first day, and she said, "Mahal kita," one more time. And I said, "I know you do." That was never the part one couldn't believe. And I meant it. That's the thing I can't make simple for you no matter how I try. Then I went home to Vanderbijl Park, to the face brick house and the weeds and the load shedding and the 2 kids who phone on birthdays, 67 now, poorer than when I left, by the better part of $20,000. You'd think I'd be bitter, and some days, ja, some days I am. I'll be honest with you. Some nights I sit on the stope with a Clippies and Coke, and I hate her, cleanly and simply. But most nights I can't manage it, because I keep coming back to that kitchen, and the 2 things I heard in the one breath. Anak ko siya, he's my son, and nakakahiya na ako, I'm ashamed of myself. A woman lying to me, and a woman ashamed of the lie, at the exact same moment, in a language she'd have staked her life I couldn't understand. She wasn't a monster, Boet. She was a poor woman with a hidden child, and a mother who wouldn't stop, and an old Kano who wanted the dream so badly he made it easy for her to take it. We built that trap together. I laid half the joints in it myself. And that's the honest reckoning, so I'll give it to you straight, the way you'd want it. I didn't lose that money because she was clever. I lost it because I was lonely, and loneliness is the most expensive thing a man can carry into these islands. I went looking for someone to hear me, and I was so busy learning to secretly hear her that I never once, not properly, told her the plain truth of who I was, a tight-fisted, tight-pensioned welder from a dying steel town, scared of dying alone. If I'd led with that, instead of with money, maybe we'd have had a chance at something real. Or maybe not. I'll never know now. That's my share of it. And I own it, the same as I own the 3 marriages. The Tagalog, though, that I don't regret. I'd learn it again. Because in the end it didn't protect me from losing the money. I'd lost most of that before I ever heard the phone call. What it gave me was worse and better than protection. It gave me the truth. The whole tangled human truth of it, in her own words, unguarded. Most men in my shoes never get that. They get the English version, the performed version, forever. I got to stand in my kitchen and hear exactly how a person can lie to you and love you and be ashamed of both in a single sentence. That's the thing that still shocks me. Not the money. The money's just money. It's that I understood every word, and I still can't tell you, to this day, how much of it was the con and how much of it was the marriage. And I've made my peace with not knowing. That's the closest thing to wisdom I brought home from the Philippines. Sometimes there's no clean answer. Sometimes it was both, all the way down, and your job is just to carry it. Take care of yourselves out there, and thank you for that. That was Trevor's story, and I want to sit with you for a moment on the end of it, because it doesn't tie up neat, and it isn't supposed to. It would be easy to hear this and reach for the simple version, the scheming foreign wife, the foolish old man, the cautionary tale with a villain and a mark. But Trevor won't let us have that, and I think he's right not to. What he heard in that kitchen was a woman lying to him and defending him and ashamed of herself, all at once. A family that genuinely loved him and genuinely bled him, because in the world she comes from those 2 things were never separate to begin with. And a man who taught himself her language out of respect and out of watchfulness both, and then had to live with everything that respect let him hear. If there's a lesson here, it's the one Trevor landed on himself. The money follows the loneliness. Lead with the truth of who you actually are, what you have, what you don't, what you're afraid of, and lead with it early, in plain words, before the feasts and the flights and the house on the hill. It won't guarantee you a happy ending, but it gives whatever you build a fighting chance of being sound, instead of a thing that looks solid until the day you finally hear the crack. If you've lived some version of this, the good and the bad of it braided together the way it really comes, tell us in the comments. Somebody out there needs to know they're not the only one who couldn't sort the love from the con and stopped trying. Look after each other, ask the hard questions early, and keep your eyes open. This has been Inside the Philippines. We'll see you on the next one.